Hey, it's Jerad with Ditch Auto, and I'm back here to do a review of the 2470 G Master lens for Sony. Now, I did an unboxing and initial thoughts of this lens like 4 months ago, and I promised that I'd come back and do a review, and time has just flown by. So I apologize for those of you that were eagerly awaiting a review of this lens. Now, what's great about having taken so much time with this lens is that I've used it many times, both for fun and professionally, and can honestly talk about it a lot better than if I had only taken a week or so with it. So let's talk a little bit about this lens. This is the full frame 2.8 aperture G Master lens from Sony. Sony recently came out with a line of these G Master lenses, which are their top tier lenses, and right now they have 3 of them. They have the 2470, the 85mm, and the 70-200, all of which I now own and am spending time with. There will be more content on those coming up because the 70-200 I'm super excited about, and I just got it in the other day. The 2470 I've been just in love with, and I'm going to tell you more about that now. So anyways, this 2470 is the first 2470 that I have loved since I was shooting Canon. Now, Canon, around, I don't know, about a year before I switched over to Sony, had came out with a second version of their 2470 lens. It's also a 2.8, and it's just a fantastic lens. Like, I loved that lens. I shot with it almost all the time because as a photographer, like, the 24 to 70 millimeter range can pretty much get you anywhere. Unless you're shooting things that are really far away, the 24-70 range is just a perfect range. And a good 24 to 70 millimeter lens is just gonna work in so many different situations. And so when the G Master was announced, I was super excited because before that, Sony only had a 24-70 that is an f4. Now, that was a gripe of mine when I was switching over to Sony was, man, all their lenses that I'm typically used to using are f4 on the Sony platform. But Sony cameras are so much better at low light, so it's not really that big of a deal. And so that was my mindset for a long time, was the 2470 f4, the 70-200 f4. That was just going to be my new f2.8. Until this lens came out and I was able to play with this lens. This f2.8 2470 meets and exceeds what I experienced when I was shooting on Canon with their latest 2470 lens. Now, Canon's 24-70mm lens was great. It was a great photography lens. It had some areas that weren't that great when shooting video through it, because it wasn't really designed as a video lens. It was designed as a photography lens. You know, so there were things with focus and just different aspects of that lens in different ranges of the aperture where there just wasn't it didn't perform as well as you would hope in shooting video. Now, I shoot both photo and video, and so I need lenses that perform well in both situations. And I don't have the time to be switching lenses all the time, and I don't necessarily want to own 2 versions of similar lenses just to get good quality images. So when Sony came out with the G Master, they were saying this is, next generation technology, future-proof technology that's going to be able to take you into the future with things that they'll do with their cameras over time. And that really got me excited. And I had to be excited because these lenses are not cheap. They are an expensive line of lenses. So now, having spent, a good 4.5 months or so with this lens, all I can say is that it's amazing. I am so glad to be back with a 2470, which was my go-to lens for so many years when I shot Canon. If somebody said, like, you can only come with a camera and a lens, you can't bring any other lenses, I usually would go with a 2470 because it would give me the most versatility and I would be able to use it in the most situations. Having a 2470 with a 2.8 aperture is just a must for any professional photographer or anybody that just wants a very versatile shooting platform. And now having that here on Sony is great. So when using this lens for photography, It just produces beautiful images at both ends of the zoom spectrum, 24 millimeters or 70 millimeters. The images are just great. They don't have any weird, like kind of, bending or weird angles like when you're shooting at 24 millimeters, which is pretty wide. Sometimes you get just weird looking images because of the way that the lens performs. And this lens just does a great job of keeping everything really nice. And you could even tell, like when you take an image into Lightroom and you apply a lens correction to it, you can see the lenses that really need a lot of correction work. Because when you apply that correction, it changes the image drastically. And with this lens, it doesn't have to change it that much because the lens does a great job at rendering real life into the camera without bending and warping it and adding any weirdness to it that just is not appealing to the eye. So this lens does a great job at that. It also is really sharp across the full range of the aperture. So from 2.8 all the way up to its maximum aperture, it just does a great job. If you really want to split pixels, it is a little bit sharper as you get up to f4, f6 in that range than it is at f2.8, but it is extremely sharp at f2.8. You could definitely shoot all day at f2.8 and not have any sharpness issues. Now, we're talking about shooting at f2.8. The depth of field fall off, the bokeh, is just really beautiful that this lens produces. Sony did a great job at designing the iris of this lens to produce great fall off when you're shooting at wider apertures like f2.8. I love shooting at f2.8 when I'm shooting portraits of a person or a couple because that just fall off that you get with the focus falling off of your subject into the background is just a beautiful effect. And if you have a nice lens, you can pull that off really well. Even some of the cheaper lenses do pretty well with that also, but this f2.8 lens just performs beautifully with that. So whether I'm shooting up, in higher apertures, f14 or whatnot, or I'm shooting wide, like the image just looks great and it looks different, which is awesome too. You can get that nice bokeh shooting down at f2.8 or even up to f4 or f6. And then when you get to the higher apertures and your depth of field is increased, you have a nice deep depth of field for shooting, landscapes or shooting photos of groups of people or something where you want the depth of field to be deeper. Very cool performance out of this. I love the fact that it has a lock on it. It doesn't necessarily need a lock because the lens is nice and tight, but it is a lens that extends out of the barrel, whereas some lenses are internal, so all of the zoom happens internal. This lens does grow as you zoom in, and so the lock helps keep your lens from opening up or anything happening to it. You definitely want to store your lens in the locked mode because this opens up here and you don't want anything to get down in there. This is all sealed well, but you definitely want to protect your lens and store it locked. It also has a autofocus lock button right on the side, which is fantastic for those of you that shoot auto and autofocus and you've locked focus, you're getting ready to take your shot, you're just waiting for the moment. Hold down that button on the side, and then when you go to take your picture, your camera is not gonna attempt to refocus. And you can miss a moment there if you're shooting wildlife or something like that, and you're just waiting for that bird to take off or to do something or to turn towards you. You have focus, but if you go to take a picture and your camera refocuses real quick, you could miss that shot or even get it out of focus, which would be even worse. So having this button on the side of the lens is fantastic. Many people, including myself, shoot with back button focus, so our camera isn't going to do any focusing unless we're holding that button down anyways. But having that button on the side of the camera is fantastic. And it really even does come in handy when shooting in video mode because I'll have continuous focus turned on sometimes on video mode. And if I want my camera to hold focus on something and not get confused if somebody walks through the frame or whatnot, I can just hold down that button and it keeps my camera from trying to refocus on whatever else is going on. It's a really nice feature. It's a pro level feature to have on your camera, and it's very welcomed on this lens. It's something that I haven't had in the past with my other lenses, and it's been a really welcome feature on the Sony platform. You also have an autofocus and manual focus switch on the side of the lens. Now, a lot of Sony lenses don't have that, so you have to rely on camera menus in order to get that, which is pretty simple. It's a custom button. You can turn your focus, your autofocus on and off, but it's nice having a switch on the side to do that because sometimes you don't want to have to go through menus and mess around with all that stuff. Now, one of the main differences of shooting on a mirrorless platform like this is that what you see in the viewfinder here is the exact same as what you'd see on the actual panel viewfinder, which means that if you go into a menu mode, you can actually see your menu up here. It's one of the things that I really like. When I take a photo, I can actually review my photo in the camera without having to pull the camera away from my face and look. And on DSLR style cameras with a mirror inside, you have to do that because you're not going to get your image preview in the eyepiece. You're only going to get it on the viewfinder screen on the back. But that's a whole nother discussion. So this particular lens, it's just really nicely built. It is heavy. It's going to make your Sony setup a lot heavier than you're used to with other lenses. So this is an 82 millimeter face on the lens, which means it will take 82 millimeter lens filters that screw on. I have some filters. It's a fairly standard size for bigger lenses, and so it's great that Sony went with a standard size so that we can use filters that I had when I was shooting on Canon. So other than that, I mean, this lens is great. It has a 1.2 foot focal distance, and so you can get pretty close to stuff. It's not quite macro level, but you can get pretty close to stuff and still have and still be able to pull focus on whatever it is that you're trying to take pictures of or shoot video of. Now jumping to the conversation of video, this lens has been amazing for shooting video. I shot almost an entire wedding just with this lens alone because it was just such a joy to use. It's just so smooth when you are zooming in and out. It's not loose at all. It's nice and tight. So when you make a movement, everything starts to move. There's nothing that's loose or jittery about this. You also have a really nice manual focus ring. And what's different about this one is that they've just really improved the system here. Now, their focus rings on the majority of Sony lenses are not mechanical, which means right now with my camera powered off, I'm just rotating a switch that does nothing. But when I power my camera on, this rotates and does all of the focusing. It's called fly-by-wire, and that system is electronic. Now, in the past, there's been a little bit of lag. You go to make a movement, whether abrupt or slow, and it takes a millisecond, a really tiny amount of time, but it does take a little bit of time before the camera starts to adjust focus according to what you were doing here with the ring. Now, they've changed that. It is immediate. There's no lag at all, no discernible lag. I couldn't tell at all, and so it's a very fluid feel. And it's nice that this is not mechanical because it's nice and smooth and easy to adjust, and you can adjust and change your focus without moving the camera because it is so easy and so gentle of movements that you can make for your focus. So I love the fact that they've done so well with this and that they've improved upon past lenses, because I do have some Sony lenses that I was just really unable to use in video and manual focus in video mode. So I trust that I've told you enough about this lens. I mean, it is fantastic. It is worth the money. Yes, it's an expensive lens and it's not for everybody. It is a professional grade lens, and Sony is marketing it as that with the G Master name. They are marketing this lens to professionals. So if you find issues with the other variations of the lenses that are out there, like, this is going to be your next step. If you don't like the fact that their other 24-70 millimeter lens is an f4, then this is going to be your next step at 2.8, and you're going to pay for it. But you're also going to pay for lenses like this if you're shooting on Canon or Nikon as well. They are more expensive lenses. So what's really exciting is that Sony is like bridging the gap between shooting on a, like, I guess you could say, a traditional platform like a Canon or Nikon DSLR and their mirrorless line. Now they're producing high quality high quality lenses, very just beautiful, well-performing lenses for their mirrorless line, and the gap is just so small now between what would be the pros and cons on both sides of the fence shooting either Sony or Canon. So if you're interested in this lens, there are links in the description below to where you can learn more information about it and or purchase it. If you do decide to purchase this and you click on our Amazon link, it helps support our channel, which helps us create more videos like this. So we really do appreciate that if you do decide to buy the lens. Trust that you've been able to see enough about this lens. I can't really say much more about it other than just show you some of my work that I've been able to accomplish with this lens over the last several months. If you have any questions or any thoughts on this lens, leave them in the comment section below. I'd love to hear what you have to say about the lens or about the concept of the lens, or if you have any questions that maybe I can try and answer for you. So thanks so much for checking out Ditch Auto, this video. We hope that you like it. Subscribe to our channel for updates, and we hope to see you back here soon. Thanks.